Hello, welcome to The Art of Character Design. I'm Dan Bays. I run development at Cake Productions, and I've also created a number of children's shows like Truthfully Tom and Bits and Bob, and I tend to specialise in animated shows. So I've spent a lot of time on the producer side of character design. And this is how I met the amazing, incredible character designer, Mr. Kenny Anderson, who's the star of the show today. And we've worked together on many, many different projects for many, many years, and you've always totally nailed it. So, I mean, look, I was absolutely thrilled when I found out we had the chance to dedicate a whole session to you and your amazing work. But why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about yourself now.
Yeah, so I'm Kenny, as I said, freelance character designer, illustrator. I've done a lot of work in kids' TV shows, and I'm starting to do more illustration work now, picture books, that kind of thing. I've done a bit of work in games as well. And worked with Dan on Bits and Bob way back in 2014, I think.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the very first kids' TV character development I ever did.
How did you get into it then? How did you get started?
Well, I studied animation. After university, I realised I wanted to be a character designer, but I knew I didn't have the skills. So I was working in games and animation, and I was just going home every night and practicing, drawing, trying to get better at that stuff. So it was a good few years of just working on the folio, getting things to a point where I thought I can show this to people and hopefully they'll see I can design characters. I worked for a time as an animator, doing traditional 2D animation, in-betweening, that kind of stuff. But after a while, I was like, I want to draw these characters. I don't want to make them move. So I decided just to go freelance. 2009 that was.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was a few years of just trying to get work. Just put my work out there, try to do the best work I could, and hopefully it would get seen by someone. And that's exactly what happened with you, I guess. Someone saw it, gave me a job. So, and since then, it's just the balls kind of get rolling, you know.
Is there any advice then you'd give to someone who's just starting out being a character designer, or who's just starting out working with character designers for the first time?
So starting out as a character designer, it's not just about the visual. This is what I'd say, and this took me a while to get my head around. I spent the first few years of becoming a character designer just thinking about how to draw something that looked good, but then realizing there's the whole other side, which is about the story that you're telling, and the world that you're drawing for, and this character is actually a real person, so to speak. So yeah, focusing on the aesthetics without focusing on the story is only half the equation, right?
What advice would you give to someone who's just starting to work with character designers, you know, who maybe hasn't approached a character designer yet, but knows they need a character design, but doesn't know what to do or how to talk to, you know, someone like yourself? Yeah. What would you tell them? What would you sort of say to them?
Yeah, I'd say try and trust the character designer in the sense of, I think when someone's got an idea and they've got all these ideas in their head and they really want to try and get it down on paper, sometimes you got to give the designer a little bit of freedom to explore and be creative, because that's when they do their best work, and they might come up with ideas which you're not thought about yourself. So I think a little bit of trust. I think that goes both ways, to be honest. You've got to trust the designer's got to trust that the person knows what they're looking for and has a clear idea, a clear vision, and the person has to trust that the designer is going to be able to kind of tease it out of their head onto the page.
How do you tend to work then? You know, at what stage do you tend to get involved?
I tend to work in the concept stage of, we've got a script, we've got characters, we know the world, but we don't know what it looks like. Or they might have some concept visual development work already in place.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to try and figure out how to slot these characters into it.
Given the fact that you must do thousands and thousands of drawings, and out in the world, you know, there's thousands and thousands of characters, you know, how difficult is it to be visually distinctive and to stand out from the crowd? Or is there anything that you do to try and stand out, or to make sure that your characters look different to other ones? Or can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, that's a good point, actually. And that's always something that goes through my head. When I'm drawing, I'm like, is this character been done before? Am I just drawing something I've seen, like on a poster somewhere? So I'm always kind of conscious of that. And I think the way to kind of address that is doing research and gathering reference and try to find a new spin on things. If you just draw straight from your head all the time without doing that, then you just end up drawing the same thing, or you just draw the first thing that comes to mind. So I find the more I do reference gathering and just doing some research, I start to get ideas that I wouldn't normally have. And I think that's the key to originality.
So in summary then, essentially, someone will send you a brief of which you'll discuss. Then you'll do a page of rough sketches just to get your ideas down on the page. You'll select those sketches that you think, answer the brief or, address the notes. And then you'll send those through, and then there'll be a process of feedback. And then you'll do an agreed number of passes, or spend the amount of time that's been agreed doing the next stage or stages. And then once you get to a locked off sketch or design, you'll then finish it with colours and textures, things like that. Is that about right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And there might be a stage in between there where you're exploring all the different kind of colour variations, or like subtle changes, like different hairstyles or things like that.
So, what is it that you need to know to get started? What should be in that first brief?
Target audience. So if it's for preschoolers versus, say, teenagers, it's going to affect the style direction of the actual character. And the same thing goes for the medium. So if it's a 2D animation, 3D animation, stop motion, something else, a picture book, that's going to affect how I design. That ties into style as well, because you can do different things with 2D that you can't do with 3D and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Genre of the show. So is it kind of silly and whimsical, or is it maybe a bit more serious and, I don't know, comic booky, whatever? As for the character themselves, what are they? The big kind of picture idea of who this character is. So are they an alien? Are they a monster? Are they a human? I guess that's the most important thing. Age is a good thing to understand, because that ties into the target audience, because generally the age of the character is going to be closely linked to that target audience that they're going for. Also, what world the character inhabits. Is it kind of a normal world, or is it like a magical world, or something whimsical, or something quite normal? What does this character do? So they might have a profession, like Postman Pat, or are they a magician, or whatever? That's quite an important thing. Yeah, I guess personality as well is important, obviously. It's probably the biggest thing, without getting too much detail on that, because when you try to design and draw a character, you can only inject so much of that stuff in a single drawing. A lot of that comes out through the performance and through the script and all the rest of it. But just having an idea of who the character is, how they will perform, their backstory, generally what they want, their kind of desires, things like that. Basically storytelling stuff. Even if you don't draw half of that stuff, it's important to know it as a designer.
Okay, so I guess we should try this crazy selection process. So I should say,
let's do it.
So I'll say to the audience that we've come up with, so that we don't, because we work on so many different shows, we're worried that we might accidentally stumble into territory that we're working on, or start referencing a show that already exists or that we've seen. So we want to try and limit that as much as possible. And so what we thought we would do is try and come up with a completely random way of making a random character. So we could end up with something terrible, or it could be amazing.
Okay, so I've written down some notes here. Just little notes to keep me on track. And if I get a brief which is a bit more involved, I always try and break it down into little simple notes like that. Okay, I just start drawing. And first drawings are always going to be rubbish. Thing is, I know it's an insect, so I'm thinking immediately it's maybe got some kind of antenna or something. I want it to be kind of cute, but not too cute, because it's not like preschool. So I'm thinking about that. And ideally research would be great here, because I'm thinking to myself, right, what does an insect look like? What does an insect face look like? And I'm also thinking about proportions here, because like good design is always about breaking up your proportions, so they're not all like these three body parts. They're not all the exact same length, if that makes sense. So there's a lot going on and at the same time simultaneously. And once I start to get familiar with maybe the cues of insect, I need to start bringing in some of this explorer, alien planet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, I think I can do that in the costume more than anything. I'm thinking some kind of spacesuit or something like that. But I'm also going to start thinking personality. So how's this character going to stand? I've got a lot of generic poses I use. You know, hands on hips. And this guy, I mean, he's not really doing anything. He's just standing there. What would this character be holding? It's good to ask yourself that. Like, what does this character hold? What do they carry around with them? This guy might be holding a map or something. Maybe he's lost. He might have a helmet on. So I just go back and forward between my sketches and say, how can I improve this one? I like the idea maybe the one's flying. It's going to be quite anthropomorphic. Well, still looking like an insect, but performing like a person. But yeah, just feeling things out. And half these sketches that I do, I'm just like, you know, they're not that great, but they're stepping stones to something better. So the more I just doodle, the more I end up coming up with stuff. Let's try a massive kind of hard back or some kind. Different shaped head. I've done a lot of round heads, so I want to push for some variety here. I don't want everything to look exactly the same. So that's more of a praying mantis type head. That kind of triangular shape. Maybe this one's got big space boots on. And the good thing about working digitally is if I'm looking at these proportions here, it's all very uniform. I can just grab stuff and quickly change it. Yeah, and suddenly I've got better proportions in my design, you know. Yeah, I don't want to go too cutesy. So I guess you're kind of drawing the proportions of a 6 to 12-year-old kid. If you're aiming for that kind of age range for the actual character. As a general rule. Bringing in more of these astronaut design kind of cues. I mean, I'm imagining this character's like an Earth insect on an alien planet. But they could be an alien insect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which complicates things further because now I'm like, okay, well, I've got less rules that I have to abide by. They can look a lot different to insects that we know. They could have like 3 eyes, you know? And so far, I've not really done anything that I'm really liking. But the more I just keep drawing, the more I start to come up with things. Let's go with some wings. And you start bringing ideas from other sketches you've done, like the big boots thing. I'm like, oh, okay, what if I bring these big boots into this character? The personality stuff, I try and start bringing it in, even in these early sketches, even just in the way they hold themselves. You know, a bit more like this character feels a bit more confident, okay, than say this character, if that makes sense. But I could take this character and start playing around with them. Say, okay, well, how can I make this character feel more bold? And I can change the energy of the pose. Maybe, I don't know, give them a stride of some kind. Maybe they're staring down some frontier. I don't know. But yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Mm.
It's all just about playing around at this point. Now this guy just feels like a turtle to me. So I'm going to delete this, because I quite like his head. I think, what can I do with this head? Big shell, I don't know. Maybe something I'm not done. Different body shape. Important thing is, I'm thinking about different shapes. So this is kind of triangular shape language going on here between the head and the body, right? This guy's a bit more rounded. And each kind of different shape language is going to give a different feel for the character. And the client or art director, it's good to show them different ones and say, well, what do you think is working? But also to think, what kind of shapes best suit this character? So a sure, bold, brave character might feel quite energetic, maybe. So maybe instead of this kind of triangle, it's a bit more this kind of shape for the body. I don't know. I'm thinking it feels a bit more kind of dynamic. What's the word? Athletic, maybe? Basically, there's a thing called contour bias, where the brain reacts to sharp edges and points. It's like a fear response. That same part of the brain that activates the fear response. So, like there's actually science behind the shape language stuff. That's why you don't really get like really preschool shows are mostly full of like kind of rounded characters and whatever. But you might feel a bit more of the kind of jagginess in the older age groups. I'm going to try one more with a bit more of a squarish feel, just for variety here. And let's think maybe taller as well. Yeah. It's thinking also, like, how's this character going to perform? Like, at some point an animator is going to have to take this character and make them move. So I'll have to start thinking about that too, because if my character looks okay, but it's like, you can't really animate that. You know what I mean? It needs to be considered. So I've done like rough sketches, and basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make them lighter. I can now go on the top on a new layer, and I can actually figure these out a bit better. So maybe add more details. Maybe this guy's got a spacesuit. And spend a bit more time on the face, because that's the main kind of part of the character. Especially in these sketches, you can get away with like a kind of loosely drawn, say, body or whatever. But if the face isn't clear, you're not going to really relate to this character. I'm not sure these trouser things are working, but try it, move on. This guy just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel brave or sure or whatever. This little sketch down here I think could work better, so I'm just gonna delete this, make this bigger. No, I want to say though, I'd spend a lot more time on this, usually.
Of course. How long would this process usually take, or how long would you usually like to allow for it?
Oh, I would spend at least maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours on a page of sketches like this. At least. Depends on the character. If it's more complex stuff or a character I need to research more, then, you could even go up to like half a day. But yeah, at least an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Settle in, guys.
No. And I feel this direction is actually working better than this direction, because this feels still a bit too cutesy, Whereas this guy feels a bit more appropriate for the age. Now, this is a point where this character is beginning to remind me of the characters from Toy Story. So I'm like, right, okay, I need to do something different here. What can I do that's different? I want to keep the 3 eyes, but what can I do that's different with the rest of the character? This is why the job's stressful sometimes. I'm like, am I infringing someone's copyright? So I imagine those kind of big dung beetle horn things here. So this is more the alien insect, but they're still an explorer. So let's give them a Indiana Jones style belt or something. It's difficult to know what to do with these extra arms. It really is. But that's kind of the fun of the character. It's got all these extra arms to do stuff with. So what can I do with this character's extra arms? Also, insects, they don't have eyebrows that I'm aware of. So I'm going to add them in because it's hard to make a character really emote without them. I've got these round eyes here. So I want to keep that roundness. I want to repeat the shapes. So the round torso, maybe around our hands, maybe at the end of his thingies, don't know what you call them. Antennae, I don't know. But it's round again. So I want to repeat these shapes. To kind of unify the design, right? So we've got 3 very different ideas. And I'm going to ignore the others just for brevity. And just kind of focus on these 3. Possibly just throw in a quick bit of tone. Just so you can really see the silhouettes of these characters. It just makes it easier to read, a bit clearer. And then I would present these to a client. And I think, I wouldn't send these usually because they're a bit too rough, right? But something close to this. But let's say I've done these 3 sketches and I'm happy with them, and I'm like, I would give them a number. 1, 2, 3. Now the key thing is they're all very different, right? And it's good to give variety, especially to the client who's going to choose one of these or choose a direction, because I'm not quite clear on which way they want to go. So these 3 feel different to each other. And I think it gives a good place to start from, a good kind of place to get the ball rolling from. So yeah, I would show and just see what feedback I got. And hope they liked something. I know I've not designed the character yet, but I've hopefully established some kind of direction for the character.
And so what would be really useful feedback?
So at this stage, useful feedback would be, it's not about the details at this point, it's more about the big picture thing. So is this proportion working? Does this feel like the right style, the right character? Or does it feel off? Are any of these going in the right direction, basically? That's the main thing at this point. Because the details are going to come. And if you don't have that solid foundation, then the details don't matter, really.
Got it. And so what would be less useful?
Oh, yeah, less useful information at this point would be, don't like this bag. Or get rid of the panels on the chest of this character. You know what I mean? Because it's like, that's not really the important bit right now.
Yeah. So I guess, and then from my point of view, I'm looking at it from the point of view of like, what's my show? Are these characters beginning to kind of communicate the things I want them to communicate? Are they beginning to start of capture the tone of the show? Is the personality coming through? Can I sort of see, like you said, the soul of the character? Can I see a spark in there of something that I think the audience are going to really engage with? And I think in all of them, I can see engaging stuff. Shall I give you some quick first pass feedback, and then I guess the next stage would be cool. Feedback and then refine, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and it's really useful you've numbered them. So please, every single character designer ever must number the pictures.
Yeah, number.
Especially when
Yeah.
you've got a huge page of designs. It's like, it's obviously reasonably easy here. You know, you got the right hand one, the left hand one, the middle one. But if it's a
That's
big
it.
page, then numbers are absolutely invaluable. Anyway,
Yeah.
so for me, I think number one, really, really nice design. I think and I feel that it's possibly a bit too cute, a bit too young looking. It might well be a character in our show. You know, there might be a young, naive kind of character who we sort of play on their naivety. But for now, it doesn't feel like our brave, our amiable, but very brave character.
Yeah.
Number two is really interesting, very insecty. I love the angles. But that one feels almost a bit too confident, a little bit too too capable, actually. So I'm not. I think that the comedy for that character isn't going to be the kind of comedy that I'm looking for in this show. I think for my show, I think number three feels like it hits the brief the most. It feels like an insect. It feels like it could live on an alien planet. I'd initially thought maybe they're going to the alien planet, but I like the idea that they're from an alien planet themselves, perhaps exploring other alien planets. This is good. So you brought an interesting idea to that one. But no, I like the pose makes me kind of feel like they've got that confidence, but also I don't know, they kind of seem a little uncertain, and I like that contrast. And so I guess what I'd like to see is maybe number three worked up a bit. But what I've been thinking is, because this is a comedy, I want to really push the comical elements now. Now we've kind of got the general idea of the character and the general proportions. I really like the way you've done the exaggerated antenna and things like that. So I think exaggeration is the way to go. But I think because this guy is amiable and super, super brave, could be a girl too, obviously. But what I'd love to do is to really push their effort they've put into this. They've put everything into they want to really impress with their bravery and their exploring abilities. So maybe they're the kind of character that would have all the gear but no idea.
This is the good thing about having someone to work with, because just as you're talking there, I came up with an idea based on what you were saying. So maybe they've got a different type of tactical glove on each hand, you know? So maybe one glove is for rock climbing. Maybe one glove is for, I don't know, picking up thorny specimens.
Right. I like it. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but the bad thing is, if you've only got the right glove on one hand, like, it's not very practical, is it? You can imagine a scenario where you're trying to climb a rock face with one rock climbing glove, and you wish you had them on all your hands, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it kind of plays into that character.
Yeah, totally. And you go to shake the hand of the new species you've met, and you've got like the electrically charged glove, or the magnetic thing that kind of repels
or
them.
yeah, exactly, the kind of weapon glove. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So is that useful feedback? Is there anything else that would be useful to know at this kind of stage?
That's good feedback. Yeah, I can definitely work from that. Once you've kind of got a signed off rough, then depending on the needs of the client, I'll probably take that rough and do a more final drawing, maybe paint them up a bit. If it's going to be for a 3D show, I'll try and render them as though they're in 3D. If it's a 2D show, obviously style comes into that. Like, do they have an outline? Are they all just like flat colours? How does that look? And yeah, just try and figure out that final look for the character. Okay, so I guess the next step for me will be to take those notes that you gave me and apply them to this sketch. And just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to keep it quite simple and just redo this character, but with more details, more thought in the costume, and also I'm going to try and make this pose a bit better. One of the key things I'm thinking about is making this pose really clear. And to make it clear, I want to basically improve the silhouette. So making sure all these different elements read quite well together. I felt like in the original sketch, a lot of stuff's getting lost. So if I can just make more space in here and just really exaggerate this pose so everything reads a bit better. And for that expression, I felt like in this sketch, felt quite, I don't know, not angry, but yeah, I wanted to bring more of the amiableness into this character. Now I'm thinking, can I get a big backpack or something in here? Something very explorer-like. But my worry is it's going to change the silhouette of the character too much, or yeah, I don't want it to obscure the character too much, so I just have to be a bit careful I don't overdo it. Trying to balance out detail with, you know, design. I don't want to get too complex with this character. I want to still feel a bit cartoony. And if this was like for a real live job, I would obviously explore this character a lot further, pushing different ideas, try different shapes, see what works. I'm just going to play around with these colours. Normally what I would do is try variations in colours, lots of different ones, and see what feels right. But I think for now, this is going to work okay. And I don't want to use too many colours, I want to restrict myself, just so that again we've got that unity in the colour palette. And it's important to think about tone as well, and by that I just mean if you take away all the colour information, the tonal structure, so the darks to the lights. And I want the legs and the arms to stand out a bit, so I'm going to make them slightly darker, just in tone there. Now I don't know if insects have tongues, I think some of them do, but they're not like human tongues. But I'm giving my character a tongue. I'm basically humanising this character, because they need to perform and relate to, you know, us people. So the way to do that is really to anthropomorphize a character, and a good place to do that is in the face. I think these antennae just need a bit of something to make them more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this pink. Yep, that feels a bit better. So I think we're almost there, you know, and I think at this point it's about indicating details, and then the next stage would probably be about really scrutinising these details. Okay, let's call it a day there.
Love it. Awesome. I think we're done. And so yeah, just finally, just tell us what that feeling's like when you've finished a design and you just feel like you've cracked it, the kind of the feeling you do it for.
I never feel like I'm 100% happy with something, and I guess it's just the artistic perfectionist in me or whatever. But I think the best part is when you see it on television, you're like, oh, I've made it. It survived. Because it's such a long process and there's so many things trying to destroy your character. Whether that's budgets or funding or someone liking it, a board of whatever, the art director liking it, the client liking it. There's so many things trying to destroy your character. So to see it get onto the screen or into the final product it's like, it survived.
How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels good. It doesn't happen that often, but it feels good to see your work out there and doing things. I guess that's because, like I said at the start, it's like I saw things growing up that inspired me to draw, and now I'm hoping maybe kids will see the stuff I've drawn and it'll inspire them to draw, you know? So the cycle continues. That's just a nice feeling.
That was brilliant. Huge thanks to Kenny for this amazing piece of work and for those incredible insights. We really hope you enjoyed the session. Bye for now.